Yeah, sorry, I put myself on mute because some people had commented that actually there is an echo. But so, I mean, genuinely, the first word that comes to me is lifelong. Okay, because actually that's what it is supposed to be. And then learning is such a master word, because listening, communication, connecting, so many aspects come into learning, right? Because most people think learning is opening up a book or taking a course or something very hard. It's actually very soft also. It is hard, but it's also very soft. I think learning is, firstly, there's an approach and a mindset. You need to want to absorb to be a learner. So what's your absorption capability? What's your curiosity capability? But at the core of it, I think you never stop learning, even though it's a cliche, is the thing. Now, the main point is, it's not one of those things that, okay, I'm free on a Sunday afternoon and I've decided to learn. Because actually, it's like walking into a room, whether at a party, a social get-together, in your conference room or anything else, and scoping the room, right? And the people who actually look at that kind of gauge, which is the group that's more attractive, and I'll go out and maybe interact with them. Or in the conference room, who are the 2 or 3 people I'll strike up the conversation to make my point across. Learning is about that. It's about a strong observation, a power of observation.
Yeah. When I was listening to your answer, I was also thinking that when we speak about learning, we most times connect that to education. And that in many ways becomes almost like a parallel, right? So, and also if you look at the last year and a half, just like how we look at education and look at how we learn across that has changed so much. How according to you has that, from a macro perspective, how has that changed? How is the way we learn, not just the last year and a half, of course, but like last couple of years? What is the trend that you've been seeing in terms of how that's changed?
So I think, firstly, learning is different things to different people. Firstly, I think most people think that when I'm in my cycle of education, which is through school and then college and undergraduation, there's a calendared event to it. And that has a different connotation of learning. But I think the real learning and the whole context of how it's shifted today is twofold. One is, once you start your career, and then you believe and actually realize that it's going to be a long learning. So one is, a lot of people come in the beginning and used to say, should I do my MBA or should I just get on to on-the-job learning? That was a different connotation to learning.
Yeah.
And also, I think the pandemic has kind of put a different twist to that, because I think the learning for most people has become this one-way communication, like this platform today. It is a mode for interaction. For most people here, they'll take 1 or 2 thoughts. We're going to talk for 1 hour. But even if you take 1 or 2 thoughts, that's real learning. You don't have to really be that involved in anything else. You take what ascribes and what is something that's relevant to you, take that away. I think that's going to be very important. But today, I think learning, most people have struck that I need to be on my toes and I need to keep going.
Yeah. And as you kind of go along and you're learning through life, and I'm just thinking of the term lifelong learning itself, right? And I'm thinking, how do you kind of make sure that you absorb the right things? And I think one part of it is also, like, someone dropped it into the question box saying, is unlearning a part of learning as well? And I think that was an interesting question, because your brain can only kind of hold so much. I think our RAM only holds that much at a certain point of time. So how do you look at the unlearning process if someone has to look at it?
It's a very good question. I think, it's also about being open to that. I think one of the things is, most of us go through life a lot in a comfort zone. So firstly, if you want to unlearn, it's an attitude and an approach. When you're in your comfort zone, you're not going to unlearn in a situation, because unlearn is not about, oh, this doesn't apply and this applies. That's not how necessarily unlearning happens. The key is, how much of the past is relevant to you? The biggest part when we want to unlearn is the following. You're posed with a problem and then somebody says, I tried this 2 years back and it didn't work, which means for the rest of my life, I'm going to figure out, no, this doesn't work. That's part of unlearning, right? Because how relevant is the past and the precedence of what we set out to do? Because most of us live a lot either in the past or in the future. We're always dreaming about the future, or we're holding on to things that we've learned. the key of unlearning and the most important aspect of unlearning is to drop those shackles that said, when you move to another job, you say, you do two things, for example. You say, oh, there were one or two colleagues of mine that really I worked well together. I'm going to bring them into my new job. That's a normal reaction. That's a great example of you're not ready to unlearn. Because really what you're doing is you're just adding to your comfort zone. These are people you are very comfortable with. Your own estimation is, no, I won't find people as good as that, which is completely wrong. Oh, we'll work together because they'll finish my sentence. Again, you're not going to learn more because all of you are in your comfort zone. And so you've got to leave that shackle and then you've got to move forward. So unlearning is not about just switching off on saying, oh, when I learned in my MBA and I heard this case study, this was wrong. It's much more about a very, very practical approach and leaving a lot of the precedents behind and not constantly banking on them that, no, in my previous job, I used to do this, or 3 years back, that's how, this is what works for me. When I do this, it always works for me. It may not work for you again. And vice versa. This doesn't work for me, but actually it can start working for you.
I love the whole point about taking people with you, right? Same how we take baggage along with you and you move from place to place, and that just becomes, in many ways, you think of it in a pre-existing form, and that actually makes you think about one thing is the fact that as you kind of move along, how important is it to not stay static in that sense, right? Because there are things that you need to hold to yourself, and there are things that you need to keep adding on to the mix of things. And so how does curiosity to okay, this is interesting, this doesn't really connect to what I'm doing right now, but I can learn from this, it kind of help me in what I'm doing in the future. How does curiosity play into this?
It's a very personal thing, and curiosity is a lot to do. It can be curiosity meaning just pushna tha, but then there is the incisiveness, and then there's the inquisitiveness in that. And I think curiosity is something, it's part of your lifelong learning process, right? Because you're not going to learn unless you ask questions. The biggest thing for me on curiosity is that when people ask me who have been your best mentors, and I'm saying not many, but the people who have are the ones that ask me the hardest questions, the toughest questions where I said, why didn't I think of this before? That's really when you really get, it's not the best advice that I've got, but it's the questions that I needed to then feel, why didn't I think of this before? So I think curiosity is something that actually gets you up in the mornings. Curiosity is something where you feel not satisfied. Curiosity should make you feel a little bit on your toes. It's not one of those things that says, I'm just curious I'm always a curious person. Yeah, sure, that's perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that. But it has to have an end, But also, I think a lot of people take it to the hilt, where you're constantly saying, I asked 23 questions. That can be quite painful. So there is a context of being over-curious for the purpose of what I would call impressing people.
Yeah.
And for some of us who are asking, when is Vicky joining? I think you're joining at halftime, right? So hold on to all our boring conversations.
7:30 is when he's going to be joining again.
So I think hold on, and our boring conversation will get even more sprightly when Vicky joins us.
The points you're making, right, and I'm thinking about them, all of them in some way align with what it takes to be an entrepreneur, to build a business in today's world, right? The fact that you're curious, and that fact that you're constantly learning and unlearning, and all the points you've made so far in some ways kind of align altogether to being an entrepreneur. So would you say that's what defines being an entrepreneur in today's world, and has that changed in recent times? Have more things been added into the mix?
I think today people look at this that, an entrepreneur is different, but actually professionals today and in your work life, you almost need to be an entrepreneur. And the only word definition between entrepreneur and entrepreneur is that you're not a self-employed person, but inside an organization, you're an entrepreneur. But I think in today's job environment also, if you want to be in the top 50 percentile of your company, you actually have to behave entrepreneur. And what does that necessarily mean? If you're too conservative, it's not going to work. If you're under the radar, you may think it's a nice way to be under the radar. I don't get over noticed, but I don't get under noticed. That's not going to work in the 21st century. It's not going to work in the next decade. You will have to get out there, step out there, and be noticed from that point of view. So I think from an entrepreneur, it's a very evolving process now, because just the pace at which you need to necessarily take decisions, work on things has evolved a lot. And I think it's also about how you handle pressure and stress, right? You need to feel good about it. If you're constantly bogged down, then you're not going to find solutions. The basic aspect of leadership in a job, even if you're a manager with 5 people reporting to you, you are a leader. Most people actually think, no, but I'm a manager. And I'm saying, no, but 5 people are reporting to you. 5 people's life, what they do, how they work, is all dependent on you. You don't need to be a leader only when you're a CEO and you have 1,000 people reporting to you, or 1,000 people whose life are responsible. As soon as you get out there, that is the core aspect of leadership. And the only way you become a better leader is when you're going up the food chain with more and more experience of really leading people. And I think that's the critical element.
Would you also say that storytelling plays a large part in it? If you have to, in many ways, right, what we're doing right now is storytelling in a way, and this is how all work conversations happen right now. So through the entire process, and I don't know if this is something that has been focused on enough. If you look at how education has been, we never really focused on stories. We focused a lot more in the past on, okay, you need to learn these things and you move ahead, and that'll help you with your job. But what role does storytelling play?
Storytelling is an evolved word, so I want to clarify that for everyone listening onto this program, which is that, most people think, "Arey yaar, kuch kahani bata do yaar." Kuch, it's not a break in the middle of a serious conversation. Storytelling is actually it defines you. It defines your passion more than what you want to do. And the best example I give, and I've done that in my most recent book that I've done also, is that, for example, in interview skills, there are 2 candidates that are being interviewed by the same person. Your CVs are what they are. And they says, okay, in 5 minutes, can you just give me your background on yourself? And this first guy just goes chronologically, very clinically, but nicely and properly narrates his entire CV. This is what I did, then I did this is my schooling, my college. And then the next guy starts and says, when I was 18, this one thing happened. There was a major cross-section. And because of that, I chose engineering, or I chose to be a lawyer, or I chose to be this. Then that one incident played such an important part. Then the next 3 jobs I took, this happened. Even the interviewer will feel, my God, I'd love to have this person on my team, right? Because when he gets into the conference room or in a meeting or with the team works, he's going to be able to connect more. So storytelling is not about making up a story. It's not about in a break to have something to lighten things up. It's really about how you define yourself to people, A, and B, how you connect. Because the most important part in teamwork, in jobs, in promotions, in everything else is how you connect with people. And I think it's a very, very powerful tool. Most people think, but then you need to be talented. I need to do some homework before I can come up. No, all of us have stories. All of us have multiple stories of experiences, bad, good, ugly, anything, cross sections. I think if they come alive, it'll be phenomenal.
When you're telling that story about how someone can kind of start off that response to that question, what also came into my mind is the fact that in many ways we expect things to be linear, but in a sense end up being non-linear, because that's how we normally speak, right? We as human beings, we don't speak in a linear form. We 2 people having a conversation, it goes into different directions, and that's where the essence of it comes out. So how does that relate to how someone needs to be as a business leader or an entrepreneur as well? The whole focus on being non-linear in the way you think.
Yeah, so non-linear for a lot of people sounds like, past, present, future, then that's not non-linear. I mean, I think for me, thinking non-linear is what keeps me going. And for me, the first criterion of being non-linear is that I don't hang on a lot to my past. That doesn't mean that my past has not made me, because my past has given me a lot of experience, has made me understand pros and cons of many things. And it's improved my gut and my ability to take decisions at various stages. But I don't hold on to my past. So one of the things is the past is becoming less and less relevant to what we want to do in the future. And we need to accept that. The second thing about nonlinear learning is, what are the risks you're taking? Because I know people think, but I'm in a job, how can I take a risk? I've got a sandbox, or I've got limits to what I would do. No, I think every single day, your company is expecting you within limited means to take risks. Risk doesn't mean everything has to fall off the cliff. Risk means, are you going out and beyond your thing? So that's the other part. Now, if you combine leaving not your past behind and not completely constantly being dependent, like, this is how I used to do things, and increasing your risk profile in the office for decision making and standing out, the rewards are incredible. For a lot of people, they'll say, okay, but risk, I'm not too sure. I'd rather fly under the radar. And I do want to repeat what I said a little earlier. There's nothing wrong with it, but you're not standing out today is no longer going to guarantee you a long career, a high growth career, or even job security.
Beyond this, what do you feel, especially with the way the world has kind of evolved over the last 4 or 5 years? What are the spaces where people should take that? And I don't think the word is risk, right? When we look at education, many times people say, okay, I've chosen one path, I stick to that, and this is what I kind of learn, and that's where my career is going to be. Today's world's a lot more dynamic, and so to kind of make that choice about saying, okay, what might be on the periphery of what I'm doing that I should upskill myself on, what around that should I? So how does one make that choice about what they focus on?
I think if you're in a particular career, it's not necessarily that you change paths, but it's going to be absolutely necessary that you get smarter and a little bit more specialized. So if you're planning to stay in a particular career zone, whatever that may be, in technology, in product, in marketing, in data analysis, or anything else for the future, or as a lawyer, as a doctor. Now, you're a doctor. Now, you're not going to change paths suddenly. But on the flame side, a lot of people join our armed forces, and then after about 10 years, 15 years, they get into and look at it differently. So if you're not going to change paths, then you need to figure out, how am I going to learn higher, faster, and be a much more specialist in my job? For the person who's willing to and looking to saying, I want to change courses a little bit. And that doesn't mean I go straight from technology to marketing, but it's more about, how do I become a more 360 degrees? So a lot of people, it's not about yin or yang. It's not about shifting from X to Y. It's about being more 360. So I would advise people that are looking, that they feel they're maxed out in their particular sector or vocation, start by being a little bit more round-ended before going into another one and then realizing, oh my God, this is not for me. Because it's very difficult. It's not that easy. First, you're saying, I'm saturated here and I'm burnt out. It could be you're burnt out in the job, you're burnt out in the organization, you're just burnt out as an individual and need 6 months of a break, or you peaked in your learning in that one sector or specialization. I would say broaden your horizon before switching it now and say, I want to be a marketeer from an engineer. I want to be an engineer from a marketeer. Because the cost of you realizing that actually maybe that's not what I want is going to be quite expensive. And that's what I would say.
What I also like about what you just said is the fact that what the world today allows for is the fact that you can actually learn about something without taking the dive into that particular area, right? I mean, there are ways in you can take up courses, you can connect with people who do work in that space and do that. But let's say you're an entrepreneur and someone dropped this,
and just to that, Varun, to interrupt, sorry. It is if you're unsure about your vocation, the best thing actually you can do is get back to learning. So if you take a course on something, you'll get a guidance of whether this career track change is going to work for you or not.
Yeah, and what has come to was actually, someone actually said that, what if I'm an entrepreneur, I've been running a business, I've been able to bring it to a certain point, but that itself starts feeling boring. Do I try to pivot the company because I'm feeling bored, or do I think of doing something else? So I thought that's an interesting question, because that makes it trickier, right? Because then there's a whole lot more things at stake there.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky. I don't think it's that easy. And I think it's a very indulgent question that you will feel before you get to that post. But I can tell you that when you're building something, if you're bored about it, there has to be a reason why. Are you personally bored, or you just feel the company, the people, and everything else is stagnated for what you want to do? I think you are an entrepreneur and you'll augment it. You don't need to shut it down and move to something else.
Yeah.
Find a way to augment it. Pivot is a harsh thing, because there's too much change for your entire people there. And I think nothing will be so unbearable that you can't augment it first and slowly pivot it, is what I would say.
Yeah, and there are also a few people who kind of asking, let's say someone's focused on the arts, and they suddenly feel the sense of saying, okay, do I need to learn a little bit more about technology? Do I need to focus on AI to upskill myself, etc.? Just to make that switch as well. So if you're focused on something that's extremely right-brained and you have to suddenly switch on your left brain in that sense, how do you evolve your way of learning?
I think it's now no longer about switching. I therefore want to reiterate, it is about augmenting. You have to do plus from now on. You could be in the creative zone, but at some stage, even if you're a great digital marketing person, you'll have to have a business sense. Today, more than ever, even if you're in technology or in product, it's too insulated for you to say, no, but this is my world. And I'm not that connected with business. In fact, I don't like working in an environment where there's too much presence of business, because technology should be doing that. Yes, there are bubbles that may happen in some large companies, or Google may say, this is just R&D for 5 years. You're blessed to get jobs that come in that category with low accounting. Even in a pharmaceutical division, if you have to discover a new drug for cancer or for Alzheimer's, there's a finite accountable timeline to what you do and a finite budget. So you can say I'm a research analyst and I'm a scientist, but today more than ever, you definitely need to understand a lot more holistically than you did before. Whether you're a pilot or whether you're a scientist or whether you're a data analyst, understanding business, understanding what else takes, understanding consumers. At the core of everything else today, it's not technology that's breaking as much as consumers are. So what do we need to do in terms of consumers' part for us to be able to take that to the next level?
And in that sense, this was a question that I came in much before the session, but I thought that was a fascinating one to ask you, is that if you had to say these are areas where building a business today, if someone wanted to be an entrepreneur and say, okay, this is what I'm going to build today, and if that person was you today, what would that area be?
When I first decided to be an entrepreneur in a family where I came from a lower middle class household, my dad was a professional. My brother actually studied and did his PhD and doctorate. And here I was just about a BCom graduate. And when I decided to do be an entrepreneur, the fearful question from my parents was not that I was becoming an entrepreneur versus going out and taking a job. The next question where he says, okay, so what do you want to do? And I said, well, no, I don't have an answer for that. So a lot of people define that they want to be an entrepreneur because they got such a great idea that they feel they want to do that. And there are a lot of people who know that I just want to work on something. To me, the motivation at that point was, I'm not sure I'm going to be the best person working to implement somebody else's vision. Over a period of time, I then decided what I wanted to do. And it just, sometimes it's serendipitous. So you could have a situation where you have a compelling idea. That's not going to make you a great entrepreneur. But you can also decide, I want to be an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean that the first business you're going to do, you're going to be able to be very successful in. And that's the mix and match. You have to do that. You have to stick around to figure out what it will take when you want to be a successful entrepreneur. But I would just caution people that if you haven't been one, but if you just think I have such a fantastic idea, and that's a good enough reason for me to be an entrepreneur, no problem, but be cautious about it, because that idea will run out of gas. Firstly, because even though you think it's the best idea in the world, I can guarantee you that 40 other people in some room somewhere in the world thinking about that exact same idea, but slightly with a different market and a different way to execute.
And just kind of add on to that, a lot of people kind of also want to know, saying, a lot has changed from old economy to new. What do you feel are the learnings that you've seen across your journey, saying, okay, if I was starting to build a business today, or I'm going to work in the economy going ahead, what are the key things that I should upskill myself towards? What should I kind of focus on? So I know I'm giving myself an advantage as much as I can give myself an advantage.
Yeah, well, I think, the first one really is the element of understanding the consumer. I think more now than ever, because I think, the old generation or whatever else you have done. Firstly, people stayed in their jobs much longer. You'd find people staying in their jobs for 15, 20 years. Today, 5 years is a good span for people to look at that. And then after that, you could still be there for 10 years. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. You're not, you could be growing in an organization, but that's the kind of span. I think in the past, it was a much more, we've gone through what I would call the manufacturing legacy thought. The last part really for us was really the cost arbitrage economy. I mean, India has been very much part, IT has really established the middle class of India. And so a lot of people here have grown up with some context of the IT sector, for example. But a lot of that has been a cost arbitrage element of it. Today, as the fourth industrial revolution comes in, we have to be very focused that the economies of today, a consumer at the center and understanding that and that how they're changing is very critical, which whatever you do in every aspect, whether you're in the medical field or whether you're in the whatever field. So understanding that consumer, that's changed a lot. The second one is it's become a competitive place. So this pace of working should not be one where people get stressed. You don't need to feel stressed because there's too much of a high pressure job. Yes, there'll be pressure to perform, but you'll have to calibrate that yourself. The people who get stressed actually is where they set expectations well beyond what they can mark. But I think today, if you want to be in an interesting and in a high growth company, then you signed up for a bit of a performance check. If you really want to be, under the radar, get yourself into, a multinational corporation, which is also a high growth company, but they have lots of processes and systems, and they respect the balance of that situation, which is a great place to be, great place to learn. But it could be something where you feel your career is not going so well because it's a high hierarchy organization. So it also depends on which kind of an organization you want to join and how the hierarchy works.
Do you feel that building soft skills is more relevant, more required today than it used to be? It was always a part of it, never like it's never been. But and because you've written about it as well, I'd love to hear your perspective on that aspect as that's becoming a growing focus of what you need to really be successful today.
So simple point of view, absolutely. I think soft skills is the most underrated thing outside of failure. I think we don't talk about failure as much as we all do. And I think we need to do that. But I think soft skills is a very important part. Now, to answer your specific question, is it more important today than what it was maybe 30 years back? Actually, no. Is it more spoken about? And is there an urgent sense that it'll differentiate you? Absolutely. See, Varun, I see myself as a product of soft skills. I finished my BCom and then I started my own business. At that stage, having come from the background I came, I didn't feel I had the communication skills. I didn't feel I had the confidence level because you always feel, oh, somebody's always doing something better. You come from a small town and then you already feel small townish, which is so wrong. There's no such thing as that. But it took me the better part of first 5 to 10 years to only hone my soft skills because I didn't have hard skills. For whatever reason, I'd chosen that, I want to get on and start my business. So I took a very hard route to build my own self-conviction, my sense of self-clarity, my sense of communication, and all the aspects. And today, I feel I'm a product more of soft skills than hard skills. But for people looking at just hard skills, I can only urge you, it's a very, very important part of it. And I think it's very undernourished, especially in a country like India. Because if you can be really smart, but if you're not communicating that smartness in an effective way, if you're not connecting with people, then you're an island. And I think therefore soft skills is of utmost importance.
Do you also see adding purpose a lot more to how you function and both in business as well as an individual becoming a more important part of it? Just like businesses that work behind a purpose also have a lot more social focus in that sense. You're a social entrepreneur as well in terms of what you do across with Swadesh. Just want to understand from you, are we seeing that movement there? We're becoming more and more socially conscious in terms of what we want to do?
I wouldn't say we're being more and more socially conscious. And I just would like to say to this target group that my belief is you're either running a business for profit or not for profit. And I think people misconstrue this question of I'm running a social enterprise as something which is for less profit. And there's no such thing. It's either for profit or it's not for profit. This for less profit is actually, especially in countries like India, where whatever you do, you need to solve problems at scale. And you're not going to be able to attract talent You're not going to be able to attract the best minds. You're not going to be able to attract the best funding if you're doing it for less profit. So focus on solving for a larger scale of people, but do it either for profit or for not for profit. This social sector is fantastic. I think today, unfortunately, the media evangelizes a lot more people in the new economy, but there are incredible entrepreneurs and professionals in the social space. But to them, the only thing I would say is that it is something that you need to be clear about why you're doing what you're doing. So upGrad for me is a for-profit because I want to impact the scale. Swadesh is a not-for-profit, which we also want to apply for scale. And just the approach, the culture, the problems, the solutions, all are different. Hey, Vicky, hi.
You joined in. Vicky, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Hi, sir. Hi, Varun.
Hi, Vicky. You came in at an interesting point when we were, we've been through a few rounds. There also been a bunch of people in the chat who've been asking when you're joining in. And so Ronnie very sweetly told them the time that you would be joining in is what you said.
For all of them, a big hi.
So we've actually been discussing a lot across, just lifelong learning, where careers are kind of going, etc. You also had an interesting trajectory in terms of how you ended up doing what you do. You didn't go linear, you went non-linear in terms of becoming an actor eventually. So how did that journey kind of happen? Like, what were the choices you kind of had to make if I had to look at it from a non-linear standpoint?
For me, I actually don't know. It's actually so non-linear that I don't know where to begin from. So I think somewhere the seed was there since childhood, where I would be very active on stage, and I would really, in spite of being a shy and a coy boy, I would really love to be in front of the audience, because somehow it just made me feel very liberated as a child, where you would get an opportunity to make mistakes, where you would get an opportunity to express yourself. And it was all part of the act, you know. So I think that's where it all started. But I guess it was not really on the forefront that, this is going to be the job that I will choose, and this is what is going to be what I will be doing every day of my life. So it was there. I was following, I was a good student. I was very much interested in mathematics, and I used to love that subject. So I took up engineering, and I was doing my engineering. Then in the second year, in fact, the college faculty took us to an industrial visit. And till then, if anybody was asking me, what are you going to do? What are your plans? I would just say whatever my group of friends would say, which was, MBA, or I would do my master's in the US and, kind of do the job over there. But that one day actually kind of changed everything for me, because when that college trip went to that, I think that, I don't know which company that was, but when I went there and I saw people working in front of computers and everything, that is something, for the first time I felt something very purely, that I don't belong in. This is not made, we're not made for each other. I can reach that chair in front of that computer, because my academics support it, and I will be there, but I won't be happy over here. It's not what I feel when I'm in front of an audience. It's not what the beautiful feeling that I get when I perform. So that's when I had actually decided that, okay, it's going to be a complete detour from here. I will finish my education, because that was a thing that was, put out very plainly in the family, that you need to finish your education, because more than what you will learn from it, it's the discipline that sets, that it requires you to sign up for, and that becomes a part of your character doesn't change overnight. It has to, you have to cultivate a character. So that was there. And I guess then I finished my engineering, and my day one of acting started by joining a course in acting in 2009. This was 2009, July 2009. And that's how my journey started into acting.
In the first half, we were talking about the importance of storytelling, and I think you were not even part of it, but the first instinct for you at the end, and that's the beauty about it, right? I mean, you told us your crossroads of life, but through a story. And I think that's what we were really talking about today, that it's very, very important that each one of us have got incredible stories, and that's the best way to introduce ourselves, because then people start connecting with you in that manner. So
Correct.
that's fantastic to just hear it the way you explained it.
Yeah, it's like the example you gave, Ronnie, earlier. This is almost that, but in a
yeah. And trust me, it's unrehearsed. We didn't exchange notes.
There's actually a question that came in, and I think that's interesting. It'd be interesting for me to ask both of you this: is that is learning and achievement the same thing, and what's more important? I thought that's an interesting question, kind of popped into the Q&A box. Ronnie, I'll start with you, and I'll go to Vicky from there.
Learning any day, because achievement is momentary, learning is forever. I'm a firm believer in the fact, and I live my life through the fact that all glory is fleeting. And therefore, and because of that, a lot of my friends and colleagues tell me I don't celebrate enough, because I'm saying, okay, that's great. Now, next. But to me, learning any day to achievement.
Vicky?
I feel there's the difference that I feel between learning and achievement is that, any kind of learning makes you feel content, but any kind of achievement would ever make you feel content. There's still something you'll feel that, oh, there's still more to achieve. There's still more to achieve, which with learning will also be there. But with every learning, you will feel satisfied and then grow from there. That'll be your start point again. That'll be your start point again. So I'm with Ronnie sir on that. Learning always, always. Because learning equals evolving, and that's more important.
You mentioned evolving, right? I think that's an interesting one to look at as well. Is that there was a time when a niche wasn't considered a good thing, but in recent times, I feel, be it in business, be it in your career, having a niche has become a good thing, right? I'd say niche is a good thing. So I'd love to get your perspective on how you look at carving a niche for yourself. Vicky, I want to start with you, and I have a slightly more. I have an extended question from that for Ronnie, so I'm going to give him some time before I get to him on this one.
Carving a niche. To be very honest, in my case, it wasn't as if like it was planned. Like be it like how my journey started by getting labeled as this parallel cinema actor, or this new kind of cinema actor, and then from film to film it kind of I kept getting new labels here and there, and which I love. I want to keep getting labels, break them, and get a new label, which I love as an actor. But I guess I also felt lucky that I got into this field at the right time, where like we spoke about evolving, the audience was also evolving with us, where like Ronnie sir said, they understood the importance of storytelling. They wanted the story to be the hero, where if the story is the hero, if they connect with the story, they would appreciate, they would find out who that guy was in that one scene, and they would make him the star. They would talk about him. So I guess I came into this world, which I absolutely love, at a very beautiful bend, where that niche was being created, and there was a space for a Vicky Kaushal to kind of show his talent and kind of grow himself. But carving, I think it reminds me of a line that Robert De Niro said, that at sometimes your career graph is also defined by the things that you say no to. So, and that's where, because it was also very very easy for me to get stereotyped. It was very easy for me to get, like, in a certain section of the kind of roles that were being offered to me. And sometimes I was doing nothing for 7 months and waiting for that one opportunity where I would feel that, okay, I would be able to show a different shade of mine as an actor, and then probably the industry would trust me for a color between the two colors that I show, rather than playing the same color again and again and again. And then they would feel that, no, I'm only made for this color. So it involved those kind of risks as well. And I guess it was the combination of both, I think, destiny and this conscious decision that, this is a certain plan that I have. And that's how I think I kind of kept making a path, and one step at a time kept walking forward.
And if I can just add to what Vicky said, because I think it's very important for the takeaway for this, because for a lot of people, niche sounds like a narrowness. It's actually a much more broadness, right? Because it spells out specialization. I mean, a brain surgeon is a niche, but hey, he's saving lives in that sense. So there's so many aspects of what we do where we actually zero in. If I had any learning, I think the ability to focus and be selective can be considered niche, but actually it's not. And I think the other great point Vicky brought up is the power of saying no. I think a lot of us, and especially I think it's an Indian temperament, we never get down to saying no. We'll always say, ho jayega. Actually, I'm saying, why ho jayega? Why can't you just say no if it can't get done? Don't overcommit, because in any way you're going to come there. So I think, but to your specific point on niche, I think it's actually to be celebrated. It is something that is coveted, and it's not to be looked at as a narrow band. I think it's very important as a takeaway for people.
When you're saying that, I'm a prime example of someone who's terrible at saying no most times, and then at some point overload yourself so much and you have to turn around and be that person. So I shouldn't have said yes.
In the movie film industry, I can tell you nobody says no. It is around and around. Yeah.
But when you look at the broader space of how, let's say today, if you want to build a business, if you want to kind of look at your career for the future, what are the points to say? Okay, there is no there's no original piece, right? There's always been something that's similar, has some aspect which is similar in that sense. So if you want to build a business today, or if you want to be an entrepreneur today, and you're saying, okay, I still want to build that niche for myself within something that is largely still has been done by others, or someone else might be working on something similar. How do you set that in place?
I think originality should not be mixed up with the context that you don't get inspired by various different things. So I think it really depends on, and a lot of people talk about copycat approach. Actually, it's not easy to copy. It's very difficult to copy. I mean, when you're plagiarizing something, that's not like, okay. But actually, there is no such thing as copying, because you're in different circumstances, different consumer base, different country, different market, different price point, different everything. So I would say if you can really get inspired by something and execute it in a different manner, it's actually a compliment, and it's not that easy. And for people who think, oh, let me take this idea and bring it here, 99% of the time you actually fail. Why? Because it's like, if somebody asks me, 5 years back, you regret this. And I'm saying, how is that relevant? Because yes, let's assume 5 years back, I regret maybe exiting out of media. The point is, I may have more regrets, because even if I flash back 5 years, the situations that would have occurred after that are so very different that you can't trace it. There's no such thing as hindsight, because hindsight doesn't give you the ability to have ideal circumstances after that. So that's what I think would be my answer to this.
So taking it from there, would you then say that the ability to understand which situations you need to capitalize on, kind of take on and say, okay, at this point, this is the choice I need to make, and this is what I can kind of move ahead with? Or rather, when you make the wrong choice, how do you make sure you learn something from making that choice, which you might in not like far away hindsight, but let's say one month back hindsight? How do you kind of learn from that? How does that evolve? I'm going to ask both of you this one.
I was trying to kind of draw an example to that question, and then know that, okay, what would I do if something like that happens? And the thought that came to my mind with that question is that, what if I get through, I'm in the middle of a process of shooting a film where I realize, it's not what I'd imagined when I read the script or heard the narration, and then this process somehow it's not fitting in or whatever. For me at that point, I don't know, I could be wrong, I could be right, I don't know that, but and this has not happened till now, so I can't really know if it's right. But I would imagine that as an actor, because I've committed to that particular project, but it's also because it's got a end date to it. It's not like a job I'm committed to forever. That project will have an end date. Till that time, as an actor, my job would still be to be completely sincere to that particular job and completely still surrender to that process, because eventually I have said yes for my submission to the vision of that director, right? And then if it's probably not on the same plane, I would still be submitted to that. And then, it's like I will sink with the ship, with the captain or whatever, and or we'll reach the skies. So that's what I could gather, but I don't know if I'm in the right space or not. I don't know. But
No,
I
but
would
I think it's
actually
extremely good
like to hear
example.
what.
It's really a good example about that.
Yeah.
See, because and Varun, there's no such thing as a good choice or a bad choice, because actually that gets decided much later.
Yeah.
So just to take on Vicky's example, what he's talking about is maybe at that stage when I said yes, and then during the process, I'm feeling less and less of a conviction. That doesn't mean it may finally turn out to be a wrong choice, because
Correct.
that the film may go out and become a gangbuster.
It does happen
He's
sometimes.
yeah, exactly. So he's expressing his interim period of maybe lack of self-conviction on that choice that he made. But there's no such, because if you go back and get comatose with good choices and bad choices, probability is you'll make very few choices in life.
Right.
So I think choices is a very, very important crossroad for almost everything. It's tough choices, but bad and good is not the first words that should come to your mind, because bad choices can be also made good. Sometimes just sticking it out on something can make what you thought didn't go well finally go well. So when do you decide whether a choice is you're having a meal or you're taking an on-the-spot decision of something that is very transient, and today that's different. But if you're taking one which is going to affect your career, and based on that, for example, as Vicky explained, he felt insecure. Did I make the right decision? Did I make the right decision? I'm not feeling good, but the outcome could be quite different. And vice versa. You could be thinking about it as a gangbuster, and then it didn't turn out that way. So that outcome is a later decision, but don't let it cripple you making the choice that you need to make at that stage.
Yeah. It's also when you look at especially last year and a half, right? Just everything that kind of has been happening around. It's also been at some point people have struggled with holding themselves together mentally, and just like have the mental strength to kind of move ahead and do all of that. So are there things that both of you all have done in the last year and a half that have made sure that there's a certain level of, because you can only learn, you can only make choices, you can only do all these things if at some point you find that you can bring your mind to a certain level of stability. What are ways in which both of you all have been able to both learn yet also kind of keep yourself at that in that state?
So you want to go first?
Yeah.
So for me, it was it was just taking one day at a time. It really made me focus on in the moment. I was lucky that I stay with my family, so I had my near and dear ones with me. So if in case there was a day where I was feeling emotionally out of myself, I had people to share with. But in terms of my own growth and in terms of my own kind of insecurities, that when will I get back to work, because that's what I love doing, and it's just been a week since I've started working again, and I know how wonderful I'm feeling since a week. But it was that I had to kind of bring myself back to, okay, a minute at a time, an hour at a time, a day at a time. Tomorrow is going to be a new day, and then it's going to be a new day, and then it's going to be a new day. We are all in this together. It's not that it's just me. So, and also at the same time, also it was very, very important that I would count my blessings, that, okay, my family is safe. My mom and dad are here with me. For many, that's not the case, and that's a much worse situation than I am, rather than just. And also I feel discipline plays a big, big part. I truly believe that if you're not disciplined, you're a slave to your moods. So that also kind of helped me a lot, because if I tried to be organized and I tried to make a pattern for myself, and I stick to that pattern no matter how I'm feeling on that particular day, because of the circumstances around us, it makes me less vulnerable to my moods.
No, I think Vicky's hit the nail on the head on one thing. When you're going through a tough period, living in the present and taking it a day at a time is actually very, very sound. And I think, you have to go up into the Himalayas and meet a monk for somebody to tell you that basically, why do you meditate? You meditate only to slow yourself down and be in the present. So all of us want to live our whole lives thinking at some stage we'll get into a state of nirvana, and that actual state of nirvana is only breathing. And the only state of breathing is getting yourself to the here and the now. And so there is a technique to that, and there is a logic to that, and there's a belief to that, and it's really an answer. At a time when you're most troubled, if you can slow things down, and then the other part, which is really look around you, and you will always feel a little bit more privileged than anybody else. Because I can guarantee almost anyone that's looking out, maybe not out their window, but just looking out to see that there has to be two things that you need to feel blessed about. And the second one I would absolutely agree is, you don't need to go out and meditate to figure out that if you slow yourself down, you'll find your answers actually.
Yeah. It's actually, what you're saying, Ronnie sir, is reminding me of, strangely, of, it could be a funny example, but my physical trainer, my gym instructor, and every time it's those final reps, those 3 reps, which are extremely tough. The 12 counts that you did was still manageable, but the last 3 counts is where he says that, this is where you need to have calmness and chaos. That's how you achieve those 3 reps. So I guess the past year, 2 years have been those last 3 reps for all of us. And it is only important that we be calm in this chaos, and only then we can, go through these 3 reps.
I love the analogy of the last 3 reps, and because and someone reminds me of every single trainer I have ever met has always had that thing with the last 3 reps in that sense. Just sticking to the last year and a half, right? What have your key learnings been about how things have changed in just like, because at some fundamental levels, there are many things that have changed about how we as people, as businesses, as professionals kind of are functioning in the world, and some of it might go back. I heard the term new normal, so I've only said that once and I will not say that again. But how have what's evolved, and what do you think have your learnings have been? What have your learnings been over the last year and a half? Vicky, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to let I'm giving Ronnie time to think this. No, I'm
oh no, I needed some time.
I'm waiting for him. I'm waiting for him.
I'll go first, maybe, and Vicky can have
yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah. I think we're all victims of our habits. The most thing we feel most comfortable about and what we revel is in our habits. And I think the last 1.5 years, the most disruptive thing for most of us, which has made us feel insecure, alarmed, stressful, is most of our habits have been disrupted, whatever they may be. The routines and the habits have been disrupted. And actually, for a lot of us who haven't faced the ultimate crisis of actually being struck by the pandemic, that one, I think I've found most people find it extremely debilitating. And then they question everything from that point of view because it's not what you've normally been used to. And I think that's been the biggest one for a lot of people. But I think and everyone is now looking for a new normal. The big problem is actually that the new normal could just easily slip back into the old. And I think for a lot of people, this has been a great opportunity for people to reassess. The damn problem is we have an extreme lockdown. And for 3 weeks, all of us are petrified. But one fine day, nothing has changed. We haven't increased our vaccination. And then one fine day, because somebody said, okay, you can step out at 4 o'clock. And all of us think the world has gone normal again. So if you look at the core of it, it's just, I want to go back to my habit. And I was forced without it. And now I need to do that. And I think that's something, if we can go past that with this 1.5 year of everyone being pulled and slowed down, it can be quite life-changing.
Vicky?
It's actually so true that it's actually quite destroyed the answer that I had in my head. because I was thinking, but then I again, to think of it like that, it's a thought that you get when you're locked down, that no, you're not going to take things for granted, and and that's the learning I'm getting, that I'm not going to take things for granted. But it does happen, and there is a truth in that once that thing comes, that okay, now you can step out and the shops are open and you can shoot and you can do this, you celebrate that, oh, we've gone back to where we were, yay, and then that kind of fizzles out and blurs out, that what about the thought that you had 10 days back that you're not going to take it for granted. But I guess it's somewhere there also, and we are kind of learning and evolving together and understanding the situation, from a personal experience. Now that I'm gone back on set and we're shooting, keeping all the precautions and doing all the precautions, and all of that there, but we are not taking this freedom that we're getting now post the second wave, or whatever. But they're all very prepared that, okay, we might get hit by another wave, so we need to like be on our toes and finish our shoot or whatever. So they are at least not taking things for granted like that. So but I mean, there's a lot that you've learned, and somewhere it's got kind of like fogged out, and then you kind of get hit back by it.
Yep.
I actually had a question which one of the first things I wrote down when I was preparing for this session was to ask both of you, what have you upskilled yourself with in the last year and a half that you got time to do, which we might not have had time to do before that?
Well, as far as my wife goes, I wish she would have said cooking, but it's not happened as far as I'm concerned at all, to be honest. I think a little bit of patience is something that has actually been something that I've been sort of looked at. And I have to say, actually, I have specialized a little bit more, and I found myself more productive when I am on off time than on time. So I think that's been quite a revelation for me. And, having gone through many aspects, I found it curious as to why suddenly in this last 1.5 years I felt that way. But I found myself being more productive when I'm not so busy in every sense of the word. And I think this is a kind of period where, because we're sitting digitally, we just feel we need to be extremely fidgety and restless. But actually, I've learned for the converse of it to be true.
When you were talking about the not cramming up the day as much, there's a concept I read recently which kind of stuck with me. It's something called ego depletion, which basically says that our minds are like batteries. So when you start off in the day, you're in full charge like your phone is, and as you get towards the end of the day, it starts depleting. So if you give yourself gaps in the day, you're not really running full charge on the battery through the day. So I guess, I mean, this kind of connects to what you just said.
I'd just like to add one more thought to that. I've also learned to interact and find people with positive energy. Because of this technology and the ability to just put your camera off and off, I figured out that anyone's giving me negative energy, I'm switching off in that process. And I mean that. And I think it's a very powerful tool, which is now going to hold me in good stead, because it's not about your batteries don't need to debilitate by the evening. At 6 o'clock, if I've had a very motivational or a very good conversation with somebody, I'm good for the next 4 or 5 hours. But if somebody sucked me out, I'm dead. So I think besides battery, it's about positive energy and negative energy.
I couldn't agree more. Vicky, what have you
upskilled yourself with? For me, actually, there was a big upscale. And for me, it was reading books. I was so ashamed that I was totally not into books. And I don't know why. It just never happened. And last year, I got into books and I was like, this is what I was missing. And it was such a gift for me, in those troubled times, that I just got completely sucked into it. I read, and because I was also trying to find my space as to what is my kind of book, or what is my kind of read. I kept jumping genres, some fictional, non-fictional, self-help, everything, autobiographical, everything, and from Stephen Hawking to what do I give reference to? Some fictional, what's her name? I'm forgetting her name. It's only one book that I read of hers, the famous British writer. Anyway, but there was a full range, and I enjoyed it so much because it just I don't know, I just felt like my horizons had kind of like pushed beyond just by sitting at home, and there was this world I would create, and I would just get completely sucked into it. So that was a big plus one for me.
It's been an amazing session. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Vicky, for taking the time. This has been a fabulous season, but I think the finale was we kept the best one for last. And thank you.
I hope there's no rapid fire or something like that, right?
I'm not that kind of a host, so there's no my rapid fire.
Thank you so much. I can't handle rapid fires.
I'm a podcast host. Rapid does not happen in podcasts, so no way that's going to happen.
Okay.
But thank you so much for being a part of Future Forward Sessions. Thank you to upGrad and LBB for putting this together. Thank thanks for everyone who joined in. We had the highest turnout we've had all season. So if you like this session, share it across all platforms. You'll find it on upGrad's YouTube channel. You'll find it on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. Tag everybody who might want to watch it, and you can tag upGrad, you can tag LBB, you can tag me if you want, tag Ronnie and Vicky as well. And yeah, that's it for this season of Future Forward Sessions. Thank you all for joining in.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Varun.
Thank you, Vicky. Thanks for being here.
guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.